Hello everyone, it's the storyteller here. I've prepared something slow, eerie, and sleep-friendly for you tonight. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments. Are you drifting off already, or still wide awake? Frayed Edges, Monday, 6:50 p.m. Sitting hunched over the scratched wooden surface of the desk in the corner of his room. Hideo Nakamura froze mid-brush stroke and stiffened, the hairs on the back of his neck rising up in response to the sudden, inexplicable certainty that he was being watched. He was home alone, had been for days. The house was deathly quiet, and the night was still. He'd been buried so deep in silent concentration while he practiced his kanji that he could have heard a moth flap its wings or a spider scuttle across the floor. Nobody, not a living, breathing soul, could have come down the hall, slid open his door, or entered his room without him noticing. Not a living, breathing soul. And yet, now he spun on his stool, expecting to find one, his breath caught in his throat as he came around and rose, arm up in readiness of defense. Calligraphy brush brandished like a weapon. Nobody was there, but the sensation of being watched didn't leave him. His room was small, just 8 tatami mats in size, and from where he stood to the wardrobe ahead was only a couple of paces. To his right, next to his desk, and flush against the wall, was a thin, uncomfortable mattress, which lay, without a base, flat on the floor. 3 of the bedroom walls, those to his left and right, and the one that held a curtained window behind him, were made of brick and plywood. The one ahead, which separated his room from the corridor, was a 2-panel traditional shoji, a latticework of bamboo in a wooden frame covered with sheets of translucent paper. The outermost panel was on a track so it could slide, but it was closed now, the way he'd left it after entering the room. A bare bulb dangled from the ceiling, illuminating the room sufficiently. Apart from a few boxes full of textbooks and a rack on which sat some pairs of shoes, there was nothing in the room behind which anything that shouldn't have been there could have hidden. The only place any such thing could have been concealed was inside the wardrobe, which was built into the wall and sealed by another sliding door. It was this door that captured Hideo's attention a second after he stood. Or, more specifically, it was the almond-shaped tear in the center-most paper panel, and the blackness beyond that his eyes came to rest on. The tear had been made a few days prior, when his feet got caught in the blankets as he hopped out of bed, causing him to stumble and plunge his thumb through the delicate paper. Ordinarily, this would have been a cause of concern for Hideo. But with his father away, there had been no need to panic. What his father didn't know couldn't turn him into that wrecking ball of rage Hideo had become all too familiar with since the passing of his mother. So it was a blessing he wasn't there to discover the damage. As minor as it was, it would have pushed him over the edge, the way every slight inconvenience seemed to these days. His father's unpredictability had been growing steadily these past months, along with his dependency on alcohol, and Hideo could no longer anticipate when or where he might snap. They didn't speak much anymore, not even by text, and he had no idea how long this latest business trip might last. It might be days like the last one, or weeks like the one the time before. Whatever the case, he really did need to find time to repaper that shoji. For all he knew, his father could return that very evening, and that would mean trouble and bruises. If only he could fit it in around studying for his exams, practicing for the upcoming calligraphy contest his school had put him forward for, and training for the baseball league finals. All would be good, or at least as good as it could be. While walking on eggshells, an unexpected flicker of motion in the darkness behind the tear made Hideo jump, and he staggered, bumping into his seat and knocking it over. He didn't know what he'd seen, but he didn't hesitate in dropping his brush and snatching up the wooden stool in panic. Turning back towards the wardrobe, he half expected to find the door sliding open, or something hideous wriggling out through the hole. Instead, he found there was no longer darkness behind the tear, and he thought he could see the sleeve of his jacket. He creased his brow and took a step closer, squinting to peer through the hole. Yes, that was it. His white and blue baseball jacket, hanging where it always hung, in silence. And with that realization, he no longer felt he was being watched. Just my imagination, he thought, lowering the stool to the floor and catching his breath. Studying too hard, too much time alone in this empty house. Whatever he'd felt, whatever he'd thought, it was just a con of the senses. His mind playing tricks, telling him it was time to take a break. Deciding to do just that, Hideo picked up his brush, put it back on the desk, then made his way out of the room, heading down the hall to a lonely kitchen. Tuesday, 5:45 a.m., an hour before his phone alarm blared, he came alert, woken not by hunger pangs, nightmares about his father, or fears of being late for an exam, but by the horrible, goosebump-raising sensation of once again being intensely watched. In the dark, he fumbled on the floor for his phone, snatched it up when he found it, and jabbed it out into the room. The screen lit up with the press of a button, and he scanned it around, searching for anything out of the ordinary. His surroundings were illuminated only slightly, but it was enough for him to see that all looked normal. His door was shut, his curtains drawn, the light bulb dangled darkly. His desk, his stool, his boxes of books, and his shoes. Everything exactly as it should be. His hand stopped moving when the glow from his phone found the tear in the closed wardrobe. Shoji. There was a darkness beyond that was darker than that of his room and seemed to throb. Panic seized his chest, and he jumped up, casting off his blankets and the textbooks he'd fallen asleep with, and stepping forward, free hand searching for a cord above his head, tugging it when he found it to ignite the bulb. "Is somebody there?" he asked, dropping his phone on the mattress and advancing in his shorts towards the wardrobe. Don't be stupid, he thought. Of course nobody's there. How could anyone be there? It's just the wardrobe. He was at the door in a second, reaching out with one hand, slipping his fingers around the edge of the panel's wooden frame to slide it open. The light from the bulb rushed in, proving at once what he already knew, that there was nothing to discover within except dangling clothes, the smell of mothballs, and towers of folded blankets on the floor. The darkness, if it had been there to begin with, was gone now. The door had been opened, and Hideo stared in bewilderment. The wardrobe was void of evil, peeping entities, and he no longer sensed any presence. What is wrong with me? He wondered, wiping sweat from his brow as he slid the door shut. Why am I so on edge? Telling himself it had to be exam stress, performance anxiety, exhaustion, looming deadlines, fear of his father, grief over the loss of his mother, or some kind of mind-warping, paranoia-inducing combination of it all. He slid the door shut and returned to his mattress, switching off the light as he passed beneath it and crawling under the blankets to get more sleep. Wednesday, 7:58 p.m. The second he entered the room, sweaty in his mud-stained baseball uniform, aluminium bat resting lightly on one shoulder, he could sense the presence watching him again. Stopped in his tracks in mid-yawn, he spun to glare at the tear in the brittle square of paper. His ceiling light was on, as he'd left it, and though earlier it had shone into the hole, allowing him a glimpse of the clothes within, all he could see there now was darkness. His face flushed as his eyes probed the black as pitch nothing, which seemed to be staring at him. His blood ran cold, his heart thumped loud, a lump stuck firmly in his throat. "Who's there?" he said, voice trembling, fully convinced now someone was hiding in the wardrobe. "Whoever you are, you better come out. I've a baseball bat, and I'll use it." Not a sound came back in response. Not a whisper. Not a giggle. Not a growl. If it was a ghost, or a demon, or something otherworldly, haunting him and spying from beyond, it didn't play its tricks to established rules. If it was human, or a thing of flesh and bone, it didn't care. A jot it had been rumbled. Maybe it was because he'd just come home from training, and his body was pumped full of adrenaline. Maybe it was because the baseball bat felt powerful in his hands. Maybe it was just that he was sick of being weak and quaking before others like a baby. Whatever it was, Hideo forced down the lump in his throat and strode to the door, slamming it back and stepping through, brandishing his weapon in both hands. As before, there was nothing out of the ordinary to be found, and nothing to be seen other than undisturbed clothes on metal hangers and neatly folded blankets on the floor. He jabbed his bat forward into his shirts, slid them aside, checked every inch of the back wall. There was nothing. There was no one. It was empty. "This doesn't make sense," Hideo said, lowering his bat. He was inside the wardrobe fully, in the space between threshold and clothes. He decided he should examine the torn paper panel from this side, in case there was something he was missing. So he took hold of the sliding door and pulled it shut. Almost at once, a chill seemed to descend, and he felt like he'd entered a vacuum. It could only have been his imagination again, brought on by the uneasiness of the moment. So he forced the notion from his mind and told himself it wasn't as cold as he thought. "Is it you?" he asked, craning his neck to examine the frayed edges of the tear. "Are you mad because I ripped you? Are you trying to drive me insane?" There was no logical thought behind his words. A shoji panel couldn't feel anger, nor did it have the ability to haunt or stare, regardless of how old it might have been. And old it was, which was clear from its brittleness and discoloration. Who knew how many people had slept in this room and used this wardrobe? Who knew what this door might have seen had it only had eyes? Logic didn't seem to factor into the current situation, so Hideo thought nothing of it when it occurred to him the tear did look like an eye, and he suddenly had the urge to peer out through it. Slowly, carefully, he moved his face closer and positioned himself right behind the hole. Squeezing one eye shut, he squinted to see out through it, only to be punched in the gut by the shock of seeing someone on his stool, hunched over his desk, apparently writing. Terrified, Hideo spat the air from his lungs and fell back, dropping to crouch amongst the blankets. What the hell? His mind raced, trying to process what he'd seen. What the hell was that? Starting to question his sanity, and clutching his bat in both hands, he straightened back up and returned his eye to the hole. He had to have been mistaken. He couldn't have seen what he thought. It was impossible as the fact it was now somehow dark inside the room. Someone had switched off the light. The person who'd been sitting on his stool? He couldn't see much, but he could tell right away that person was gone. He could make out shapes in the darkness, like the stool and the desk and the mattress lying flat against the wall. there was something else, too. A large mound on the bed. And just as he realized what that was, a light blossomed into life. A rectangular light he knew came from a phone. He was frozen, captivated by what he saw, unable to look away. He watched the rectangle of light rise and bob around the room like a ghostly lantern. He knew, before it happened, the ceiling light was going to come on, like he knew who'd be beneath it when it did. "Is somebody there?" he saw himself ask, before jerking his head away and shuffling back, burying himself deep in shirts and jackets. No, 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 he panicked, pressing himself back against the wall and clutching the bat to his chest. Eyes shut. He thought he heard the familiar swooshing sound of the shoji door opening. Impossible, he thought, squeezing his eyes so tightly shut he felt that they would burst. This isn't real. This isn't real. It can't be. Swoosh. Again. Then bang. And his eyes jerked open. Had the door opened and closed? Had someone peered inside? No. I'm imagining it. This can't be happening. It can't. The first time he'd felt like he was being watched, he'd been sitting at his desk drawing kanji. The second time he'd felt it, he'd been lying in bed, disturbed from a restless slumber. The third time had been just a few minutes before, when he'd entered his room and sensed the presence. And what had he done then, as completely immersed in this nightmare as he was? Hideo didn't believe the door would open again until it did. Nor did he believe a version of himself, a doppelganger, a demon, would step across the threshold and enter the wardrobe. But it did. It was dressed like him. It carried a baseball bat like him. It was dirty from sliding in mud like him. But it wasn't him, because he was there, shrinking back into the corner, watching it prod its bat into the clothes to sweep them aside. Steel hangers screeched along a tarnished metal rail like witches shrieking, and the noise cut right to his core. Just a minute ago, he'd done the same thing, examining the back of the wardrobe and finding nothing. This one wouldn't come away so empty-handed. This one was going to find him. And with that thought, that fear, that panic-inducing, life-threatening realization, Hideo acted. The scream surged from the depths of his being, and he pushed himself up and lunged forward, swinging his bat as he did, striking the shocked-looking doppelganger square in the face and knocking it out of the wardrobe. He didn't stop. The adrenaline coursing through his veins was electrifying. It made his body burn and flooded him with rage. This was a fight for survival, a battle to retain his place in the world, to protect his identity. And he couldn't let this phony Hideo hurt him, and so he hit it as it fell to the floor, again and again on the head. pounding it into submission, pummeling it brutally until the feeble, desperate cries it made fell silent, and its spasming, copycat limbs lay deathly still. He stood over it then, panting, wheezing, sweat dripping off his brow, blood dripping off his bat. He stared at the demon's battered face, found he was unable to focus on it, didn't want to. Instead, he examined the blood splatter that decorated the tatami mats around it. The patterns looked like kanji characters painted in thick, red ink. "Hideo, I'm home. Come say hello to your father." The shout that seemed to come from the kitchen at the bottom of the hall startled him, and he jerked his head to stare at the bedroom door. His father was home? Since when? He hadn't heard him enter. Had he been there all along? If so, what had he heard? And what would he say about the torn paper shoji, let alone the monster on the floor, wincing, afraid to see the mess he'd made, and the demon's caved-in face? He looked back down. There was nothing there. No doppelganger, no splatter, no kanji characters sketched in crimson blood. "Hideo, get your ass out here, boy!" Confused, panicked, Hideo caught a glimpse of his reflection in the shiny, polished surface of his bat, and shuddered when he didn't recognize it. It was his face. Of that, there was no doubt. But something was different. Something had changed. Something seemed missing from his eyes. That's when he noticed the bat wasn't covered in blood, but he knew that it could be. "I'm hungry, Hideo. Come and cook something. Don't make me go in and get you. There's no food in the house," he muttered, too quiet to be heard by anyone other than himself. "There's nothing in this house at all. Hideo!" He knew what it was now. Hideo! He knew what was missing from his eyes. Hideo! It was fear, and worry, and sorrow, grief, and loneliness, and hate. All of it gone, as if it had drained out of him, leaving just the one thing he had left: anger. "Coming!" he shouted back. Then he went out of his room to greet his father. I became insane, with long intervals of horrible sanity. Edgar Allan Poe, noises from the wardrobe. I was crying when Mummy came to tuck me in for the night. "Come on, Jamie, my love, dry those tears away. And please, let's not have any more of that silly nonsense about monsters in your wardrobe again tonight," she whispered, stroking my cheek. "You know how cross Bill gets about it." Bill, my stepfather, a horrid man, always shouting at me for one thing or another. How I wish he and Mummy had never met. It was only since he had come to live with us that the scary noises had begun. "But they are real, Mummy, I swear to you. I hear them." She sighed and stood up, padded over to the wardrobe and opened the door, revealing a small closet packed with my clothes on hangers, which she shuffled from side to side. "See, sweetheart, only your clothes in here. There's nothing at all to be frightened of now, is there?" I swallowed as hard as I could and managed a tiny little shake of my head. Bill stood watching at the door. He narrowed his eyes, giving me one of his mean sideways looks, and told me that if I disturbed them again that night, I would have to stay inside my room the whole of the following day. Mummy was watching me, so she didn't see the expression in his eyes. He never does it when she's looking. She smiled, kissed me again, and walked over to him. "Look, we'll leave your nightlight on for you, my darling," she said. "Good night now." It was my shivering that woke me. It was exactly 3 o'clock. I am sure of that because I heard our grandfather clock in the hall downstairs chime 3 times. I was ice cold. My duvet had tumbled to the floor and my fingers and toes felt numb. Outside it was ever so windy and raindrops were hammering against the window pane. I liked to keep my curtains open so I could see the man in the moon when he smiled at me. That night, though, I couldn't see him at all. The clouds were hiding him from me. I reached down for my duvet and wrapped it around me, blowing on my fingers to warm them up. That's when I heard it, the rattling of someone fiddling with the wardrobe doorknob. I longed to shout for Mummy, but I knew Bill would be angry if I disturbed them. Instead, I slowly pulled the pillow over my head and tried my best not to listen, but it was no use. Then came a familiar sound. My wardrobe door always creaked when you opened it slowly. I could tell that it was edging open, little by little. You couldn't mistake those short staccato creaks as the door jerked. It had to be the monster, and tonight it was coming out to get me. Normally it stayed inside the wardrobe. My heart began hammering in my ears so loudly, I remember being terrified that it would hear. Curling myself into a ball as tightly as I possibly could, I squeezed my eyes shut and bit down on my lip to stop myself from crying out loud. I remember tasting the blood as it trickled into my mouth, but I still didn't dare move an inch. Eventually, the door stopped moving, and I heard a shuffling of something brushing against wood. Peeping through my fingers, I was just about able to make out a human shape in the dim glow of my nightlight. A smallish figure was standing at the bottom of my bed, staring at me. I could hardly believe it. The monster was no bigger than me. But the thing was, it was pure evil. I just knew. I think that was when I wet the bed in terror. I couldn't help myself. But I couldn't let it know. I remember the sensation of warm liquid spreading down my legs and hoping that if I simply refused to budge, the horrid monster might not find out. Maybe if I recited the Lord's Prayer to myself, it would go away and leave me alone. It stayed there, watching me for ages, whilst I prayed with all my heart for it not to hurt me. Eventually it hissed, "It's time!" Then it stomped over to my door, cracked it open, and slipped out onto the landing. When I heard it knocking on my parents' bedroom door, I almost had heart failure. My stepfather would be furious. It hammered on the door again, and then I heard Bill groan and ask in his cross voice what the hell I thought I was up to. Suddenly, their bedroom door crashed open and slammed against the wall. What I heard in the next few seconds were the worst sounds I had ever heard in my entire life. First, there was a scuffling, and I heard Bill swear out loud. After that, there were lots of heavy crashes, followed by a kind of gurgling and a piercing shriek that sounded like Mummy's voice. Afterwards, I heard her screaming, and screaming. There were more bangs, then a few resounding thuds and weird moaning noises. And still, the screaming didn't stop. What could I do? I wanted to run and help Mummy, but how could I? Paralyzed by fear, I jammed my fingers hard into my ears to block out her screams. After what seemed like ages, there was silence. Utter silence. Not a sound. I tell you, that deafening silence was 10 times worse than the screaming. I then watched, horrified and open-mouthed, as the monster crept stealthily past my bed without so much as a single glance in my direction, wrenched the wardrobe door open, and stepped inside. It wasn't until it had pulled the door firmly shut with a click that I felt able to move. My pajama bottoms were still soaking wet, and now they felt yucky and cold, but I didn't even care. I jumped up and shot out of my room to see what the monster had done. It had hurt Mummy, I was certain. I had to help her. I spotted Bill first. He lay sprawled face down in the entrance to their bedroom. I didn't care two hoots about Bill, but where was Mummy? I needed to find Mummy. I leaped over the motionless form that had been my stepfather and slipped to my knees in a dark red, sticky puddle of gooey stuff, slowly expanding across the parquet from underneath his head. It was gross. I wiped my hands clean on my pajamas as I struggled to my feet and gazed around. The room looked like a scene from one of those scary murder movies Bill liked to watch on the TV. There she was. My dear mother was slumped sideways, half in, half out of the bed. Her frilly white nightdress was crimson. Her beautiful hazel eyes were wide open, still full of shock, her mouth gaping in a now silent scream. A huge kitchen knife protruded from her throat. I recognized it. It was the sharp, shiny one from the back of the kitchen drawer, the one Bill always used to carve the lamb on Sundays. As gently as I could, I gripped the smooth brown handle of the knife and tried to lever it out of her poor, lifeless body, but it was ever so difficult to do. When it finally came free, there was an awful slurping noise, and more blood trickled down her neck. I fell backwards and let the knife drop to the floor. The coppery smell of all that blood was suddenly overpowering. I think that must have been when I began to scream. I was still screaming when the police broke down the door, having been alerted by Mr. Wilson, our next-door neighbor. I very quickly learned that, just like Mummy and Bill, they didn't believe there was anything or anybody in the wardrobe. Even to this day, nobody believes a word of what I say. It has become unbearably hot in this room. I start to feel skittish and wipe my sweaty palms up and down my jumpsuit legs to prevent my knees from jiggling up and down. It is made of scratchy nylon material. Horrid orange color, too. My jaw clenches tight. "Why doesn't anybody believe me, doctor?" I whisper through gritted teeth. That's all I can remember. I swear to God I have not invented anything. It is honestly what happened on the night my mother and that man were killed. My hands ball themselves into fists. I have learned this is not considered good behavior, however, so I force myself to uncurl them, finger by finger, and carefully place both my rigid hands, palm down, and fingers outstretched on my lap. Tears are flowing, dripping from my chin to my chest. I let them fall, but they begin to cause the cloth to become clammy, and it sticks to my chest. Feels like blood. God, I can't stand it. My left eye twitches and I begin to rock back and forth. My throat is dry. I feel myself slipping. Dr. Simpson is staring at me. "All right, James. I think that is more than enough for today," he says, removing his spectacles and placing them with his pen and pad on the small table at his side. "You've done well. This is fine progress we have made this afternoon. I believe our sessions are finally getting somewhere." He then smiles and reaches for my hand. I'm sweating, shaking, still sobbing. "I'm proud of you, James. This is the first time in the 11 years you've been in here with us that you have actually mentioned these sentiments of ambivalence towards your stepfather. It is excellent that you are beginning to admit and evacuate any feelings of pent-up hatred you have been suppressing all this time." He hands me a small plastic cup and presses a button on his pager. "Here you go now. Take your meds. Look, the nurse is here to escort you back to your ward. I'll see you for our next session. Same time next week, Sweetbread, an epilogue. My sister has always had a soft heart, soft as sweetbread. She cried after the old woman, despite everything, maybe because of everything. I remember holding her as she wept, both of us covered in soot, her fingers scalded from holding shut the oven door. After the tears, she was quiet. She trailed me through the awful house with its sweetbread walls and sugared windows. I found the clothes we'd arrived in, offered up her kirtle, and she donned it without a word. She showed no whisper of response when we found the treasure in the attic, only nodded vaguely when I asked her to help me fill up the few bags we could easily carry back through the woods. Maybe it would be enough to keep us safe from our stepmother's whims. I do not want to go back there. It was the first she'd spoken in hours. I hesitated outside the witch's cottage, looking back over my shoulder at her. I do not want to go back to them. I sighed. Nor do I, but where else can we go? She wrung her fingers together in front of her skirt, eyes downcast and her teeth digging into her lower lip. Eventually, though, she nodded. Fine, you are right. She looked back at the house. Wait 1 minute. There may be something left in the kitchen. The kitchen? I repeated in horror, but she only nodded. Yes. She did not think I paid attention, but I did. I know which of her potions might be useful. If nothing else, we can sell them when we get back. I nodded slowly and followed her back into the cottage, though I stopped in the open arch that led into the kitchen itself. She moved easily, though the space, reminding me painfully of just how long she had been under the witch's thumb, while the horrid crone tried to fatten me like a prize hog. She collected some dozen bottles and vials, tucking them carefully in between the bolts of silks and satins we had pilfered from the attic before returning to me. Let us go. Though there was no trail this time, she seemed to know her way through the trees. I asked how, once, when we paused to wait out the dark, but all she said was that she simply knew now, as though the forest spoke to her in a way it hadn't before. I felt the first thrill of fear at that, but I knew that she was still so scared herself. I refused to let her see it. I tried to coax her into dreaming about what sort of life we might have with the witch's pilfered treasure, and managed to earn a wan smile for my efforts. But it was cold and dark, and soon enough, we simply huddled together under a gnarled tree as we waited for the deepest part of night to pass. When grayish dawn light began to filter through the leaves, she was the first to stand. She had gone quiet again, and only answered me with faint hums or single words as we continued on our way. She seemed more comfortable to be leading us now, but something in the set of her shoulders reminded me of something I could not quite name. Eventually, I lapsed into her silence when the trees broke apart to reveal the familiar shape of our father's home. She froze. Then she broke into a run, and I was only half a step behind her. The door was already opening when we reached the stoop, and our father met us with his arms open and tears in his eyes. He held us close and apologized, over and over, praising the Lord's name. I embraced him in turn, but alongside the relief in my chest, there was an anger in my gut. It had started a spark, but over the length of our trek back through the woods, had grown into a steady flame. I met my sister's eyes over our father's shoulder, and a chill ran through me. If my anger was a flame, then hers was the dead cold of darkest winter. Our father explained that our stepmother had been stricken ill not long after we left. She was in her room now, asleep, and had been for days. He did not expect her to recover, though he had been following the physician's orders as best he could. "Perhaps she shall rally to see you," he offered us hopefully. When neither of us answered, he sighed and dragged a hand down his thick beard. There was more gray in it than I remembered. "I know you must be angry with me, with us," he told us wretchedly, "that I could lose track of you so easily. It is an unforgivable failing in a father." "Lost?" I started slightly at the sharp edge in my sister's voice. Our father did too. She had always had a soft voice to match her heart. "We were lost?" she repeated, staring at him intently. Our father stared back, eyes wide with a hint of fear. "Lost," he confirmed at last in little more than a whisper. I dropped my eyes, unable to continue looking at him. My sister did not. Abruptly, she stood from our small table. "We will go see her then." I blinked, startled both by the sudden movement and the conviction in her voice, but I followed her into our stepmother's sick room. That flame of rage flickered a little higher in my chest, and I found that I could not make myself move more than 2 steps inside the door. My sister knelt beside the hateful woman and smoothed a hand over her brow in a gesture so tender it made me want to break something. "Here." She tipped one of the witch's vials against her lips. "This will help." I almost reached out to stop her, but as though she sensed the movement, she held a staying hand back toward me. When the vial was empty, she stood and brushed her hands down the front of her skirt. She did not look at me as she left the room. I hesitated a moment longer behind her, staring at the woman who had left us to the wood and the wild. Already, her breathing seemed easier. Anger and love for my sister warred, twin flames in the center of my chest. She had always borne such a soft heart. Our stepmother was awake and lively within a day. Though shocked by our return, she was mollified enough by the offerings of treasure we had stolen away with that she simpered and even summoned up some mawkish tears through which to tell us she was so sorry we had been lost to the wood. My rage burned hotter, and my sister grew colder. "We should celebrate your return," our stepmother exclaimed, a shawl wrapped around her shoulders, but no other sign of her illness remaining. "What do you wish for supper, my darlings?" "Sweetbread." I jerked around to stare at my sister, eyes wide and mouth agape. She did not so much as glance at me, but I felt her hand take mine under the table. She smiled at our stepmother, and my throat went dry. "But you are still recovering, stepmother. I feel quite well, all things considered. I shall make it," she offered gently. I could have stopped her then, could have clutched her hand in mine and dragged us out. We could have taken the treasure and left. It had been foolish of me to think there was nowhere for us to go. We might go anywhere. Seeing our father again, hearing him refuse to admit what they had done, made me sure of that. But my sister looked at me just for a moment, and the ice in her gaze froze me to my chair. She was not looking for permission, but I nodded shakily anyway. Our stepmother exclaimed what a good, kind girl she was as she moved into the kitchen. Soon enough, the cloying smell of the baking sweetbread hung thick in the air. It was all I could do not to gag. My sister served the plates while the bread was still steaming gently, even drizzling the last of our honey stores over our parents' portions. "We can always get more at the market now," she said with a hollow little laugh. Our stepmother agreed happily, though our father hesitated a moment before doing so himself. He was watching my sister with a faint wariness as she took her seat beside me. Go on then, let us eat. They did. We sat in silence. It took our stepmother first. A faint cough, a furrow in her brow. She looked up with confusion, which changed quickly to a horrified realization as she stared at my sister. You! Our father choked, red spattering his lips. I looked away, squeezing my sister's hand tight where she had once more taken it beneath the table. We were desperate, he strangled out, reaching for her pleadingly. I did not want to. She made me. My sister shook her head. You let her. He collapsed forward onto the table, his breath a wheezing rattle that grew fainter with each passing moment. Our stepmother tried to lunge for us, but her legs gave out, and she sprawled across the floor. A scarlet trail, like candied jam, trickled from the corner of her mouth. You! She gasped again, glaring balefully up at my sister. You! Little witch! They both began to convulse. I buried my face in my sister's shoulder. I could feel her stroking my hair. Even without raising my head, I knew she did not look away until their last breaths had faded into silence. Then she simply stood, her hand still in mine. We were both silent as we gathered up our bags, still unpacked by the front door, and stepped out into the cool evening. You are afraid? I swallowed. Yes. She smiled at me, squeezed my hand again, and all I felt was cold. You do not need to be. I will protect you. My sister has always had a soft heart, soft as poisoned sweetbread, the ghost of old Jeb Brown. Childhood memories of walking home from school on Halloween Day, cool breezes under overcast skies, the scratching of dried leaves on the pavement as the wind pushed them by. They crunched under my feet and made a swoosh, swoosh sound as I walked through them. When I got home, I raked them up into mounds and cannonballed into them with a splash like crunchy water. My old Labrador retriever with his gray face would find the energy to join in the fun, pouncing on top of me with a vivaciously wagging tail. The neighborhood was always decorated for fall. There was nothing creepy or scary at all. Hay bales and scarecrows peppered the subdivision along with the old, dried-up cornstalks. Every house had a jack-o'-lantern. We'd spread out old newspaper over the table to carve my pumpkin, cutting off the top. I'd scoop out the sticky fruit and separate the seeds. Mom would wash the seeds and salt them up before baking them in the oven, while I cut out triangular eyes, a nose, and a goofy smile with only a few teeth. A candle was always placed in the center, giving the pumpkins a ghoulish glow. Homework was done with haste. A shower was taken early. Dinner was served before dark. My costume was never anything fancy. A plastic character's suit with a hard-to-see-through plastic mask that was held on by a thin rubber band. Yet, I was proud of my costume, excited to be for one night the character I chose, all ruined by an overly concerned mom who demanded I wear a jacket. The streetlights came on and the subdivision filled with kids accompanied by adults. There were vampires and princesses, robots and witches. Some costumes were homemade, some were store-bought, some were extravagant, and some were cheap. None of us kids cared. It was Operation Candy. My parents released me like I was a hungry jackal looking for a carcass to feed from. Mom would always stay home to hand out the candy, while Dad double-timed it to keep up with me as I ran from house to house. The Fambros' house was always a good one. Their mom would dress up as a silly scarecrow, much like the one from The Wizard of Oz, and sit out on the front porch. She would ask us if we wanted a trick or a treat. If you answered trick, she would do cartwheels or sing and dance, something funny to entertain us kids. I'd pick Trick just for a laugh. The Bedwells' home was my favorite. On their porch, they had a scarecrow they called Old Jeb Brown. It was made of denim overalls and a red and black plaid flannel shirt stuffed with straw, boots for feet, gloves for hands, and a jack-o'-lantern for the head. Inside the head, they put a speaker. Mr. Bedwell would sit on the couch inside and wait for trick-or-treaters to walk up and then scare them. Even though I knew it was coming, he always managed to scare me. They would always invite us in and tell us the story of Old Jeb Brown. Old Jeb once owned all the land the subdivision was built on. For many years, he lived a reclusive lifestyle on the edge of town. He rarely accepted visitors, and never when they were unannounced. He built a rickety barbed wire fence around his property and posted signs that read, "No trespassing. Violators will be shot on sight." He posted those about every 50 yards or so, according to the story. People, for the most part, took that warning seriously. However, every Halloween, there were those few who would bang on his door and yell trick or treat. Old Jeb would greet them at the door with a rifle in hand. People would go scurrying away. Jeb would always fire a warning shot to let them know to never come back. Late one night, on Halloween, 1953, a group of teens felt it was their place to teach Old Jeb a lesson in politeness. They snuck up his driveway, threw a flaming bag of poo on his porch, banged on the door, and hid. Jeb never woke to put out the flaming bag, and it caught his porch on fire. The teens who were hiding in the shadows ran off. Jeb died in the house fire. Mr. Bedwell went on to tell us that the following Halloween, those kids went missing, and that they weren't the only ones. There have been cases of missing teens on Halloween over the decades. He believes it was the ghost of Old Jeb Brown exacting revenge on bad kids on the anniversary of his death. As a young kid, the story did a good job of scaring me straight. But when I turned 13, it was just a bunch of malarkey. At that age, I hit a growth spurt and was too big to trick or treat. The little things like jumping in the leaves, carving jack-o'-lanterns, and the magic of autumn were lost on me. Frankly, I hated the season because it meant school was well underway. That year, Halloween fell on a Friday, and two of my friends stayed the night at my house. They told me there were other ways to have fun on Halloween than trick-or-treating. We waited until my parents went to bed. We grabbed toilet paper, all the eggs we had, and a couple ball bats. We snuck out of the house late that night. We found a neighbor's house with no lights on and threw toilet paper in their trees, covering it. We then egged their car using half the eggs we had. Then we destroyed their decorations and smashed their mailbox. A light came on in the house and we took off running, dodging behind another house so we wouldn't get caught. We found it all exhilarating, laughing at our antics. We took a shortcut through the yards to the opposite street, Mr. Bedwell's street. My friends saw Old Jeb the Scarecrow and immediately wanted to ruin it. I told them I didn't want to mess with that house, that I knew the guy, but they didn't want to listen. They started with the toilet paper, just like the last place. Then they moved on to egging the front of his house. My one friend, Jimmy, grabbed a large landscaping stone from Mr. Bedwell's yard and threw it through his bay window. They turned to run, but Jimmy didn't get away. Old Jeb jumped up and grabbed him. Me and my other friend, Ricky, screamed in fright, but were not about to leave our friend. We started hitting the scarecrow with the bats, but the bats didn't faze it. By then, the lights were on in Mr. Bedwell's house. He was furious, but ran outside to help Jimmy. The scarecrow knocked Mr. Bedwell down and ran off with Jimmy. We chased old Jeb all the way to the graveyard. There, Jimmy started sinking into the ground, and the scarecrow fell into a limp pile of clothes and straw. We grabbed a hold of Jimmy and pulled with all our might, but something stronger was pulling him down. We screamed for him to hold on, but the dirt was rising up over his face. His hands slipped from our grasp, and he was gone. We didn't have time to mourn or dig. The scarecrow stood back up, alive, and stomped towards us with intent. We scrambled to our feet and ran, but not fast enough. Old Jeb caught Ricky and started dragging him down to the grave. I grabbed Ricky in a bear hug, hoping to keep him above the soil, but I started to sink as well. I let go of Ricky and climbed out. I looked at Ricky. I saw terror in his eyes, but I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to end up like him and Jimmy. I was scared, so I ran, and I didn't look back. When I got home, I quietly snuck back inside and went to my room upstairs. I looked out the window, and there it was, staring up at me. I sat on my bed watching it. It never moved. Not until the sun came up and it collapsed into a pile of straw and clothes again. 30 years later, and I still have to lock myself in my house every Halloween night. The ghost of old Jeb Brown sits outside and waits, lifer. The parking lot was empty, except for dry weeds squeezing up through cracks in the asphalt, except for the deserted, rusting basketball hoop on one end, except for rustling leaves skittering across fading parking spaces in the gathering dusk, except for oil spots shimmering with rainbow colors after a recent sprinkling. The parking lot was empty. And because fate is resourceful, a steady, gloomy rain started falling, blurring any hope of discovering the mysterious body called in by an anonymous tip. What's in the corner by that dilapidated chain-link fence? My partner, Andy, asked. Looks like piles of garbage bags being buried by soggy leaves from here, I answered. I'll circle around for a closer look. I detect movement. Do dead bodies move? Nah, just rats crawling all over. Better get out and take a good look. Bummer the rain is getting worse, and the wind is picking up, turning this into a chilly, miserable autumn evening. Not even a sliver of a moon. Why is that always the way when a body shows up? Andy complained. Can't we simply call the coroner's office to come claim the neatly wrapped package? They would love that and have our badges if it turned out to be nothing more than trash. We gotta confirm whatever it is. Sorry. Get your slicker on and take your flashlight. I'll be ready to call it in. I pulled the squad car up as close as I could as he prepared to exit. Suddenly, lightning flashed. Thunder pealed as a hail of bullets pounded the passenger side. Andy fell back inside his head, exploding and pouring gray matter all over me and the upholstery. Reacting instinctively, I spun out of the lot, laying new rubber on the old asphalt and bumping over the crumbling center meridian, at the same time trying to figure from which gaping windows in the 4-story abandoned factory building the bullets were spewing, cursing under my breath. F***ing prank call! How can this be happening? Collecting my scrambled wits, I squealed a UI about half a block away and paused on the side of the street, looking back at the front of the building. Like rats abandoning a sinking ship, perps were scurrying out of doors carrying backpacks and rolled-up bedding. They appeared homeless, but any of them were potential suspects, and they were all getting away along with the weapons while I was on the horn to Central. Like a crazy man possessed, I ground into gear and plowed ahead, showering taser rays from my weapon, aiming at legs to slow them down. So what if I hit a few with my bumper? We would need witnesses. Officer down, send armored SWAT, was all I remember shouting into the mic. I sped out of retaliation range and waited for backup, not knowing if any would be available. All I wanted to do was hold what was left of my friend and partner. An 18-year veteran of the force, he was already looking forward to retiring and spending more time with his beautiful wife, Jolene, and his teenaged sons, Andrew Jr. and Joshua. I remember watching those boys grow up. How am I ever going to face them? As the senior officer, I'm the one who was supposed to be protecting him. Instead, I delivered him into a hail of bullets. We let our guard down, dear boy. I don't have anyone waiting at home for me. Why couldn't it have been me with a new hole in the head? It can't even be an opened casket. No mortician can put the pieces back together. Bleak rain continued to fall into the chill autumn night, highlighted by blue and red strobing lights and streaking lightning punctuated by thunder. By the time the captain and lieutenant got there, I know I looked like a blubbering idiot, shivering and quaking. More squads and a special weapons van soon arrived. Don't go in there without armor and shields. I think it was a deliberate ambush set up to kill as many police as they could. Got a fake tip about a body being found. But we were supposed to deliver the bodies. I'd say the bullets were coming from the second and third floor broken windows, but so many people scrambled out of the building, you may not find any evidence. Still, someone could be waiting to claim more victims. I put a few down out front. Gotta go find some more. Bet those defund the police activists are happy with this carnage. Force is already down to bare bones. Slim odds we'll be able to round up all them. Easy, Cooper. Look at yourself. You hit it all? You've done all you're going to do tonight. Lieutenant Kramer and I will handle it from here. Someone will assess how you're doing while we assess the situation, Captain Crane commanded. Soon, ambulances were on the scene with emergency medical technicians attending to those witnesses I hit and myself. Bloody headless Andy was scooped into a body bag, and our pockmarked unit was hauled in for evidence. Ignoring all my protesting, I was delivered to the hospital and examined for holes. Hard to determine what was me and what was pieces of Andy. Really, Doc, I'm still in one piece. Only need to clean the gore off. I'll be all right. You're shaking like a leaf ready to fall. When I'm done with you, I'll assign a trauma evaluator before you crash and burn. Losing a partner like that will have long-term effects if left unaddressed. Doctor's orders. Time off while you see a therapist. I'll have the support of all the guys in the precinct. I'm not sure about a shrink, but I promise you, I'm going to be someone's worst nightmare once I get back on the street to find the monsters that riddled us. They don't understand what they've created. I'll never retire. I'm a lifer now. You can bet. Gonna rain long-term regrets down on them, milk-fed. The town of Gord's Hollow was gaunt and undernourished in nearly every aspect. Its rickety streets laid out like a soothsayer's tangle of oracle bones, and its bedraggled buildings stood lean and haggard, much like the people that lived in them. The whole of it was hunched at the edge of a sea cliff, and mist rising from the crashing waves below hung everything above with a constant pallor. But there, right on the cusp of world's end, where the roar of the sea filled your ears, grew the only thing in Gord's Hollow that could be called hale and hardy, the gourd garden itself. It was this garden that made Gord's Hollow famous in our county. For generations, the emaciated people of the town had inexplicably produced gargantuan gourds that put all others to shame at the harvest festival. Their crooked-necked squash were taller than a man, their zucchinis large as coffins, but it was their pumpkins that drew so much envy. Huge and round and plump, it took 2 teams of oxen just to haul them. At the festival, the pumpkins loomed large over all the proceedings, so large it seemed they could swallow all other entries and have room left over to consume the judge as well. But their size itself was not the most striking element to their appearance, for the pumpkins were also of exceptional color. Their shells were a deep, vibrant orange, so deep and so vibrant as to almost be red. And though no one who was not a citizen of Gord's Hollow had ever seen the pumpkins cracked open, it was rumored the flesh inside was the scarlet color of new blood. It was an October day when I made my visit to Gord's Hollow. They had kept the secret of their pumpkins close for too long, and I was determined to discover their methods for growing them, by honest means or otherwise. Outsiders were uncommon in Gord's Hollow. My presence drew a searching eye from everyone in the streets. Nonetheless, I conducted myself straight to the garden's fence, a spindly wrought iron affair, and gazed through the bars at the great mist-shrouded fruits inside. "They're a sight to see, eh, stranger?" A voice called over the drone of breaking waves. The speaker was slim, as were all the townsfolk, but he wore a smile as he extended a bony hand. "Indeed," I replied, taking his hand, which I noticed felt almost as if it carried no flesh. "Would it be possible to get a closer look? I am a botanist, and I have never seen such magnificent plants." "Apologies, sir, but I don't carry the key." He nodded towards the chain wrapped about the gate and secured with a heavy lock. "Could you direct me to the person who does?" Again, my apologies, but the gourds are off limits to visitors. The man smiled consolingly, and I noticed his gums were nearly the same pale color as his teeth. "Could you perhaps answer questions about them then? I am very curious to know how you grow them to such prodigious size." "Folks that come here are always wondering about that." He lifted his narrow shoulders. "But truth is, there's no mystery to it. They're just milk-fed and tended to with lots of care." I knew about milk-fed pumpkins. It was a simple process. A small slit was made in the pumpkin's vine and submerged in a dish of milk. Capillary action sucked up the nutrients and accelerated growth. Many gardeners in the county employed the technique, but none achieved sizes like those I saw before me. I am astonished to hear that. I have myself grown milk-fed pumpkins, but not to such a result. Aye. Most folks aren't dedicated to it the way we are here. My interlocutor rubbed his arm as he spoke. We tend to our pumpkins day and night like other folks aren't inclined to do. It's just good gardening and the milk that makes them grow. But what about fertilizers and seed selection? Do you plant them under the full moon? Of course we do. The man laughed. But so does everyone else. My name's Jack, by the by. If you have designs on staying the night, my inn is just there. He pointed a skeletal finger towards a corner building with a signboard bearing his name. You'd be most welcome for supper and to stay the night. I thanked him and accepted his offer. At dinner, two things surprised me. First, there was not a single dish served made from the bounty just outside the door. No butternut bisque, no fried eggplant, not even a slice of pumpkin pie. The second was the tremendous appetite of the locals. From people so lean and weedy, I would have expected reticence at table, but they ate with a gusto I could not contend against. Platters of steak and liver disappeared before I could stick a fork in, and where the thin men put it all, I could not say. I spent the evening introducing myself and leading conversations to the topic of pumpkins, but the line I received from every man was well rehearsed. Milk-fed and careful labor, the villagers were ironclad in their conspiracy. Jack was good enough to give me his finest room on the second floor, with a window overlooking the garden. I had a spyglass in my valise, and, unsuccessful at dinner, I hurried upstairs to see what might be seen before sundown. The mist made it difficult to gather much in detail, but I was able to confirm the diligent care provided by the townsfolk. Through my lens, I saw at least a dozen at work among the vines, some using shovels and hoes, as would be expected, and others employing water cans. But my eye was drawn to some who carried crates of dark glass bottles. I noted that the umbilical vines of each gourd had an identical bottle attached. As I watched, the gardeners exchanged the attached bottles for fresh ones from their crates. Ah, the milk, I thought to myself. There was a knock at the door, and I slid my glass away before opening it. Begging your pardon, it was Jack, still rubbing his left arm. Word is, there's a storm blowing in off the ocean tonight. I'll have to close your shutter. He stepped across to the window before I could invite him in, closed and locked the heavy wooden blinds, and then was back down the hall. As the night progressed, there was no storm, but through the cracks in the shutter, I could see lamplight moving about in the garden, enough to indicate a great deal of activity. I pressed my eye hard against the cracks, but could make out nothing. I threw on my coat and decided it was time for stealth. There was no light in the hallway. As I felt my way along, my feet encountered an unexpected obstacle, and I found myself tumbling down the stairs. I lay in the dark moment. Then a match struck, illuminating the proprietor's face, his sunken eye sockets cast in shadow as he descended the stair towards me. What do you mean tripping up your guests at the top of the stairs? I said, a little sharp in my unsettlement. My apologies. It is my habit to wait on the landing in case my guests ring. I must have drifted off. Are you hurt? Upon examining myself, I saw, though my pant leg was not torn and I felt no particular pain, a stain of fresh blood had formed on the fabric just below my knee. The town doctor is just a door over, Jack said, seeing the blood. No need for that, it can't be much. I insist. I'll not have my guests injured and going untreated, not when the hurt is on my account. He grasped my arm with surprising strength and pulled me to my feet. The doctor's residence was indeed the next door over, and as I was somewhat forcibly escorted, I caught only a glimpse of the gourd patch. The gardeners were busy, their lamps glowing large in the mists, but I could not make out what duties they performed, though it seemed that some of them lay prone on the ground. The doctor was a short man, though still gaunt and hollow-eyed the same as Jack. He did not seem to have been sleeping before we knocked, and the lamps in his examination room were already lit. As we entered, he stepped quickly to the storeroom door, which had been left slightly ajar. Before he closed it, I saw its shelves were lined with dark glass bottles. A tumble down the stairs, you say? The doctor waved me towards a chair. We'll have you stitched up presently. I sat and allowed him to lift my blood-stained pant leg. I was surprised to see my shin revealed unscathed. The doctor and I both stared a moment. Then I looked at Jack. His left arm, the one he was accustomed to rubbing as he spoke, was held close against his body. I had not noticed before in the dimness of the lamplight that his elbow was dripping wet. "It's not my blood," I exclaimed, feeling foolish to be in the doctor's chair while another man stood injured. "It's yours." Jack looked down at his elbow. The doctor moved swiftly to his cupboard, from which he extracted a tourniquet, and then to Jack's arm, where he applied it with expert efficiency. As I watched the speed at which the doctor worked, I was first impressed by his talent, but secondly, I became impressed by Jack's composure. He stood undisturbed by his treatment, as if it happened every day. Then I wondered that neither man had taken a moment to examine the source of the blood, but proceeded as if they already knew where the laceration lay. as I considered this, a horror needled into my brain. "Milk-fed," I whispered. Both men turned, their deep-set eyes glinting in the lamplight. "What was that?" Jack asked, his voice soft. "It's not milk. What you feed to the gourds, is it?" Neither man replied. "It's a wickedness," I said. They seized me, one on either side. "My apologies," Jack said. "It would have been better if you'd not come to our town." With strength, I could not resist. The two men pulled me outside. The doctor lit a lamp, and I was pushed towards the wrought iron garden gate. The glow of workers' lights haloed the gourds as I was drug along. The crooked necks stood taller than my head, and the marrow squash were laid above the ground like unburied coffins. At the foot, the great orange gourd, I was forced to my knees. "This is what it takes to grow them to such magnificence," Jack hissed as he bound me hand and foot. I waited to feel the bite of a scalpel in my inner arm. Instead, I was thrust face down, then it seemed, left alone. The lamplight faded, and I heard nothing but the droning of the waves below the sea cliffs. "Ha!" I laughed to myself, suddenly realizing what I had done. I'd come to Gord's Hollow to steal their pumpkin-growing secrets so I could beat them at the festival. But I had been seen through, and this was their prank to teach me a lesson. I raised my head to cry that I knew the game was up, but before my mouth could open, I heard a quiet sound, subtler than the distant waves. It was a sound of movement, like tiny curly vines worming over crumbly loam, a sound of searching, like a great umbilical stem yearning to be fed, and then with a prick of pain, a sound of gentle susurration, as of a baby's mouth sucking fresh warm milk. Eerie. The heat, death of the sun. Reality was having a Monday with a capital M. Never mind that it was Thursday, or that Monday always began with a capitalized M, or that both Mondays and Thursdays only existed on Earth. That was all beside the point. Ron liked that about Earth, though, the calendars. Really, humans had something special going on with them. They were great with organizational skills, and he appreciated that, given his role as manager of accounts payable. He was just one cog in the existence machine, but lately Ron felt he might be the only one to really give a hoot about the overall health of the industry. The atmosphere of the Division of Material Validity office was drab, sure, but he found his job of keeping existence running to be interesting. There were an infinite amount of vendors that manufactured the various components of reality, and he enjoyed his role of ensuring that those accounts all got paid for their hard work. Ron's day started off fine enough. His boss, Mike, prattled through the morning meeting with his usual ennui before giving him a checklist of urgent tasks. Ron spent his pre-lunch hours ticking off boxes. Pay the universe's monthly time invoice to keep months a thing. Contact maintenance overdue space-time fabric repair on collapsing wormholes in Sector 12. B. Review discrepancy in inertia. Report on galactic planetary rotation. Forward any Earth RFPs titled, "Oh God, please save us," or similar to upper management. He got through the first two in record time, considering he paid time ahead of schedule, but the Monday-ish nature of the Thursday kicked into high gear as he scrolled through an inbox full of dismally titled RFPs. He'd always thought the DMV overpaid reality's freelancers, so he was perplexed as to why there seemed to be so many slackers recently. Humans weren't the only ones having issues. The fluxers on Zemulus 237 were freaking out about Zemulus 237 suddenly rotating backwards, but given their sheer amount of messages, humans were definitely making the biggest fuss. He'd been scrolling for the past 15 minutes, and he still hadn't reached the end of this morning's RFPs to the Savior Department alone. Ron glanced across the aisle at Florence's cubicle and saw that she wore a similarly exasperated expression as she looked through them all. It would seem that endless earthen pleas to the heavens were clogging up everyone's inboxes. Ron, frankly, was at his wit's end. He dialed Mike's office phone extension. Why is Earth spewing out so many salvation proposals all of a sudden? Sun's getting too big and hot. They're having a rough go of things. Ron blinked and scrubbed at his forehead. That's odd. I paid Fusion's invoice. I know. They got upper-level orders to churn out more energy, though. Kicked it up yesterday. He sank back into his office chair and rolled his eyes to the ceiling. And upper management didn't communicate that with the rest of us because... Mike snorted. It was just a little tweak to Fusion's workload, not a big issue in the overall grand scheme of things. Ron sighed. Okay, thanks. Forwarding now. Yep. He set the phone back on the receiver and began forwarding messages up the chain of command, but paused at one rather offensive title. He read the message, feeling a bit nosy as he did so. From Alice Kincaid at earth.universe.2, all at dmv.universe.subject, RFP. We're dying down here, asshole. Hey, God. CNN just announced we have about 6 months before we're cooked. The sun's getting hotter by the day. I can't go outside anymore. I thought we had like 1 billion-ish years left. At least, that's what the Science Museum exhibit said when I went as a kid. Scared the hell out of me. Always has. But 1 billion years is a damn long time. 6 months is absolutely not. I would love it if you could make the sun go back to normal. I haven't done everything I wanted to do yet. Please, it's too hot. It hurts. My skin is... Please. More sincerely than I've ever been about anything. Ever. Alice Kincaid. Scowling, Ron called Deity. The line rang for a few long moments, but he was pleasantly surprised when the CEO answered. Hello? Hi, D. How's it going? Hey, man. Same old. What's up? I just had a question about Salvation RFPS. Ron could hear Deity typing something as he responded blandly, Shoot. Are you guys doing anything about them? I've forwarded several to you and the board, but they just keep coming. I was going to mark them as spam and wanted to check if you're receiving them without me forwarding. Yeah, spam them. Got it. Ron considered whether it was professional to ask further questions, but his curiosity outweighed his propriety. Are you going to respond to them? Take any of Earth's projects on, I mean? Deity laughed in an offhand way. Nah, I'm phasing out the planet. Humans are too destructive. Tarsonis's Jebulons have their act together a lot better, so the board voted to sell off Earth and invest over there instead. It's a stabler market. He felt a hot stab of dismay at the news and swallowed thickly. Understandable, but can I say? He gave a little laugh. I mean, I know it's way above my pay grade, but... Ron chose his words carefully as he said, humans have been our top client for a few 100,000 years. They've had some centuries of poor performance every now and then, sure, but we've always kept an overall mutually beneficial relationship. It's unfortunate we're ending it on a bad note. Deity clicked his tongue. Speak more freely, Ron. I don't mind hearing your opinion. Ron huffed a chuckle. Don't write them off our books. I like what they put out. Would be a shame to not be able to get their stuff anymore. What sort of stuff? Ron thought for a moment. Well, I enjoy all the love stories. They've got some great food, too. I tried a sandwich once, phenomenal. And I owe them a debt for coming up with calendars. Deity deliberated silently before replying. Jebulans just created a far superior timekeeping system, and it didn't take them almost 300,000 years to do it. Switch to using theirs. The market's moving on, Ron. Progress with it. I appreciate your input, though. Tell you what, I'll bring up your notes to the board at the next meeting. We may be able to work something out. Ron's shoulders relaxed. Thanks, Dee. Appreciate it. Yep. Have a good one. The line went dead. Ron turned his attention back to Alice's message, his cursor hovering over the Mark as Spam button. He decided to archive it instead. Ron brooded the entire commute home and concluded that he found the DMV's culture and overall philanthropic approach to be increasingly lackluster. Phasing out Earth was a bad move, plain and simple. He didn't understand the decision, even after hearing Deity's explanation. Jebulans had exited the primitive stage of existence far quicker than humans had. True, but their demeanor was overzealous. The DMV's mailroom was constantly overwhelmed with fanatic offerings, and their adoration always felt just a tad too desperate to be authentic. Humans showed their appreciation for reality in subtler ways. They were intentional with it, more honest. A message of gratitude at receiving a tight embrace from a missed loved one. A whispered, "I owe you" when swimming through crystal water. A salute when a sore knot is worked out of a long, aching muscle. Deity was a great guy, a fantastic CEO, but he had a distinct flair for the dramatic that often left Ron dealing with a nightmare at the office. For instance, around 6,000 years ago, Deity hedged a bet that chemistry wouldn't be able to synthesize enough water for Q3 on their current budget, so he'd ordered Ron to increase their payment. Mike had warned the CEO that doing so would generate far more water than could be tolerated by planets with life forms. But Deity had simply responded that those life forms were underperforming. He'd ordered that a handful of profitable creatures be retained for improved reproduction, and the task fell to Ron to proceed with the higher payment. To this day, Ron felt terrible about flooding every planet across 4 galaxies. He settled into his nightly routine, but he couldn't get Alice's message out of his mind. He pulled up the archived message as he ate his supper. After a stiff drink, he forwarded the correspondence to his personal account, then forwarded it to Alice again with an attached reply. From Ron at personal.universe.2, Alice Kincaid at earth.universe.subject. FW. FW. RFP. We're dying down here, asshole. Hello, Alice. Strictly speaking, it goes against protocol for me to send this message, and you are the first life form to receive such a communication from me, so my apologies for any disruption to your evening. Admittedly, I'm unsure how this message might be received by a human. The purpose of this correspondence is to extend my sincere condolences for your current situation and assure you that your concerns regarding your imminent demise will be thoroughly discussed at the next meeting of our board. Please note, however, that this does not guarantee immediate action. We appreciate your patience during this time. All the best, Ron. Manager, Accounts Payable, Division of Material Validity. Ron sipped on his second drink, feeling a bit more at ease with the situation. His satisfaction dissipated when she returned a response in seconds. From Alice Kincaid at Earth.universe.2. Ron at personal.universe. Subject: indistinct shriek of terror. I apologize, but I need Japanese text to perform the conversion as requested. If you'd like me to demonstrate this capability, please provide Japanese text that includes kanji characters, and I'll convert it according to the guidelines. Ron set down his glass and frowned as he replied. From Ron at personal.universe.2, Alice Kincaid at earth.universe. Subject, indistinct shriek of terror. Hello, Alice. Your quick response is appreciated, but I am confused as to your meaning. Best, Ron. Alice's reply was instantaneous. From Alice Kincaid at earth.universe.2, Ron at personal.universe. Subject, indistinct shriek of terror. Get out of my head. Get out. Get out. Are you reading a bloody email? God, it hurts. It hurts. Ron winced, pulled out his phone, and found Alice's alternate contact in the DMV database. He dialed the number for a video call. The image of a hyperventilating woman curled into the fetal position on a dirty floor appeared on the screen. She was covered in patches of charred skin, and her hair was matted with blood in some places. Ah, hello. This is Ron. Please forgive me for calling you at this hour, and for the pain you experienced receiving my initial messages. I wasn't aware my previous form of communication would be painful for a human. She let out a shriek upon seeing him appear in what looked to be her kitchen. Her hands tore at her hair as she mumbled incoherently. Are you all right? It wasn't my intention to startle you. Alice shot to her feet and tugged a large chopping knife from its holder, brandishing it in his face. What are you? Ron's brow furrowed. He'd always assumed humans would recognize a DMV agent, considering all the mail they sent. As I said in my earlier message, I'm the... What the hell? Manager of accounts payable at the DMV, he continued as she panted a string of vile curses. I read your RFP meant for the Savior Department, and I felt just awful about what's happening to your son. I thought I'd give you an update personally, maybe alleviate your fears a bit. Her subsequent screech was nearly unintelligible, but Ron deduced through the wailed expletives that she was confused about the nature of the DMV. Please, miss, calm yourself. I'm not technically in the room with you. Alice's eyes bulged, but she stilled, and the knife clattered against the tile floor. The division is quite hard to explain to a life form on your plane of existence, but the short answer is that we manage and regulate that plane. She jabbed a finger in his direction. So you're the one responsible for making the sun about to explode? Ron's teeth tugged at his bottom lip. It's a bit more complicated than that. He lost the battle against his better judgment and gave the terrified woman a simplified explanation of Deity's decision. When he finished, she sank to the floor in a heap and put her filthy head in her hands. It will be all right. The board will... Alice breathed a raw laugh. Ron looked at her with concern as the sound grew in broken intensity. Miss? Angels, she choked out between gasping fits of laughter. And God and reality itself are all just a bunch of corporate goons, and I'm nothing more than an underwhelming employee, and... Her laughter morphed into weeping. Oh, that is cruel. She was an underwhelming client, technically, but Ron didn't correct her. Is there anything more I can do to help you at the moment? He cringed at the utter devastation on the woman's face as she turned to nod at him. She was silent for a long moment, staring blankly at the heat-yellowed paint of the wall, before she muttered, "Take me back to that museum all those years ago, so I can tell my 10-year-old self to write a lot of books. to read a lot more of them, to learn the guitar, to become a rock star like I always wanted, or maybe an author. Her voice broke as she slowly stood back up. To hurry up and find the love of my life, because I've spent it entirely alone. To quit my soul-sucking office job, or to not even take it in the first place. To hug my mom long and hard every chance I get. To tell my dad I forgive him. To make peace right then and there with how insignificant I am. Because I am. Ron ground his teeth at the volume of her final sentence, shocked at how viscerally uncomfortable the word insignificant made him feel. I'll be sure to speak to Deity tomorrow at... Alice threw the knife with all her strength at his projection, ending the call. I'm sorry, Ron. I am. But there's nothing I can do. We don't undo what's already been done. Chris, the head honcho over at Time, was being irksomely dense. Ron grumbled, gesticulating at the big machine before them. I know that. Nothing needs to be undone, just done over again. Run Earth's clock backward a bit, only 20 years. Come on, I'll owe you one. Memories on board. They already primed the woman. We're just waiting on you. Chris ran a hand through his silvering hair. Deity approved this? Not, as such. Sure did. For one human woman? Consider it an experiment. You've ran back time before, for far duller reasons. I don't know if I'd consider what we needed done with that woman in the Chaplin film to be... Ron waved a dismissive hand. Chris, seriously? The Time boss rolled his eyes. Fine. Who, when, and where am I sending her? Ron explained Alice's plight, and Chris pushed various buttons on the machine. Just send back her present consciousness into her childhood self. That's it. You do realize that this might kill the woman. We've never reversed memory back into time before. He shrugged and scratched his nose, looking at a sleeping Alice on the screen in front of them. It's an experiment. Chris nodded, then cranked a few more dials. Adult Alice didn't move, but the child Alice on the adjacent screen. Ron cringed as the child screamed and screamed and screamed. Chris sucked in air through his teeth. Child Alice drew frightened looks from the other science museum patrons, until finally being subdued by her mother. Ron scratched his temple, chewed the inside of his cheek. The girl screeched, over and over again in her mother's arms. What's the point? Chris shut the machine off, locking adult Alice into her child body forever, or at least until the sun exploded. He clapped Ron on the shoulder. Call that a success? Ron was silent for a beat, then muttered, Seems like the quick death of the sun might be preferable to the existential crisis brought on by simply thinking about the slow death of it. Think she'll appreciate her life more? This time around? Dunno. Sun's still going to explode on schedule. Board's not budging on it. He sighed. No one will remember her in the end, even if she does make something out of her life. Or maybe they will for a little while, now that she can change some things. That's all most of us can hope for, really. To not be insignificant. To do something important with our lives. He shot a triumphant smile at Chris, feeling overall very pleased with himself. At least he was able to do this. Change this small thing to help such a lovely planet. Chris shot him a confused look. Oh no, she can't change anything, man. She did all this screaming the first time around when she learned the sun was going to explode in 1 billion years too. I told you, nothing can be undone, but she will be able to watch it happen all over again with her adult memories and reasoning. Maybe she'll just learn to be grateful. Humans struggle with that. If you asked me, that's why Deity's blowing him up. Ron paled, his grin evaporating. The time boss stretched his arms and cracked his back and didn't notice the color drain from Ron's face. Anyway, let's get lunch. You're buying insatiable darkness. Not the kind that comes when you close your eyes. This is something else. Heavy, dense, like the world's been erased. It's pressing down, sinking through me. I can't breathe, can I? My chest should be moving, doing something. I don't know why I expect that. Then, something else. A noise. No, not a noise. A memory. I love you, babe. A woman's voice, warm, laughing. I can almost feel her next to me, see her face, smell her perfume, something like freshly peeled oranges. Gone. Just like that. I try to hold on to it, but it slips away like smoke. Something aches where the memory was, filling empty spaces, like something lost. Am I lost? No, I'm here. Here in the dark, here in the earth pressing in on all sides. It is cold, deep in my bones, in my flesh. No, it's wrong. I feel something slipping, a part of myself loosening, unraveling, sinking into the dark. I try to reach for it, to grab hold of me, but it's fading fast, sinking below the surface like a drowning man. I tell myself, I'm still here, I'm still someone, but it feels like a lie. Why can't I move? I try to lift an arm, a hand, anything, but everything's sluggish. My fingers claw at nothing, something below, above, heavy, settled. I should be moving, I should be. Then it hits me, clear and sharp, like a broken bone. I'm dead. I'm dead. I don't breathe. My chest is still cold, rotting. A surge of panic hits, a sensation I didn't know I could still feel. I close my eyes, or maybe they were already closed, and try to piece together bits of memory clinging to me. A bright day, a laughing face, a small sticky hand in mine. Gone. Gone before I can feel it. The weight around me presses harder like the ground itself is claiming me, holding me down. I don't know how I know, but I know I shouldn't be here. Shouldn't be this. I should be someone else. Happy birthday. Her voice echoed through me, through the dark. I don't know who she is, but the words cut through me, raw. I remember her laughing, brushing a stray hair behind her ear, her eyes catching the light in that way that always made me stop and stare. She'd squeeze my hand and whisper, "You're my forever." The words are faint now, slipping away, but the warmth of them lingers, enough to hurt. I claw at the darkness. I don't mean to. I don't have to. My fingers curl through the dirt, tearing, dragging myself upward. My hands pull, dig, until I feel the damp, cold earth under my nails, grinding against bone. The part of me that still thinks cringes. The other part? It just keeps going. It's like I'm watching from far away, a thought pulsing through my mind. Get out. Get out. Not a choice, an order I can't ignore, from deep inside, where the human parts of me are fading fast. I don't know how long I claw, but the earth loosens above me, cold air seeping in, something other than the dirt. It's thin, stale, the first taste of the world outside, and it makes me feel alive. Alive and wrong. My head breaks the surface, and the night air hits me, sharp. I gasp, but the air scrapes through me like glass. The world is blurry, washed out under the moonlight. Grave markers surround me, jagged teeth against the sky. This is where I came from, where they buried me. I'm a corpse, crawling out of my own grave. The thought jolts, but it's distant, almost faint, like something I heard once and already forgot. Then that hunger, the one buried under memories, under voices, stirs, an ache deep in what's left of me, stronger than anything else. I push forward, not thinking, just moving, pulled by instinct, by the urge rising, undeniable. I'm dead. I'm broken. But I need something. I can't stop. I can't go back. The first thing I see, really see, under the sickly cast of the moon, is my hand, if you can call it that. It's a mess of sagging skin stretched over bone, torn in places, bits of muscle clinging to knobby joints, fingers twisted and rigid, blackened nails caked with dirt and something else I don't want to name. The sight, this thing I'm looking at, moving like it's mine, hits me like an electric shock, horror rushing up, strangling me. God, what am I? I try to scream, but all that comes out is a sound, low, guttural, inhuman, like an animal caught in a trap. My hand, my arm. No, this isn't my body. It can't be. The skin hangs in loose, rotting patches where it's not already gone, exposing sinew and yellowed bone. I look down and see my clothes, shredded, filthy, stained with patches that could only be. I shut down the thought, but the nausea twists inside me, pulling me toward something deeper. And then, as the horror swells, something else creeps in. It starts as a twitch, a need, deep and feral, like a slow burn crawling from my center outward. It coils in my stomach, my muscles, my bones, driving out everything else. A hunger, sharp, jagged, specific. I don't just want food. I want something else. Something alive. Number no, don't think it. Don't even say it. You don't want this. But I do. It's already there, growing, swelling, filling the hollow spaces inside until there's nothing left but the hunger. I try to push it down, to hold it back, but it's like caging fire. It flares, a force driving me to move, to push one unsteady, broken foot in front of the other, leaving damp streaks of earth where I walk. Ahead, movement, shadows, soft and slow. A person, bundled in a coat, walking the edge of the graveyard, flashlight in hand. I want to warn them, tell them to turn around, to run. Stop! But my body doesn't listen. I lurch forward. I'm watching, screaming inside, but I'm just a passenger, shackled here, while something else, some twisted, primal urge, takes the reins. My mouth opens, something wet and rotten drips down my chin, spilling onto torn clothes. But I can't stop. I'm close enough now to see him clearly, middle-aged, a little tired, maybe a little sad. He notices me, stops, frowning. Are you okay? His voice shakes, holding the flashlight up, illuminating my face. The light hits his eyes, wide with shock, as he takes in my face. His jaw drops, his lips tremble. Oh my God! Run! I want to scream. Run! But my mouth twists, letting out a moan, low and ragged, and it's enough to send him stumbling back, breath hitching in fear. He turns, but it's too late. My body surges forward, faster than I should be able to move, faster than anything this decayed body should manage. I catch him from behind, fingers sinking into his shoulders. I feel his body seize, the heat of him, the life. The hunger digs deeper, takes control of my hands, my teeth, drive into him, tearing at flesh like it's some kind of drug, some twisted ecstasy. He screams, his voice cutting through the night, but my body just keeps going. My teeth sink into his shoulder, the taste that hits my tongue. It's warm, alive. It fills me in a way nothing else can, something thick and metallic spilling down my throat, coating my mouth, and there's a sick satisfaction that follows, a relief even, like I've finally given in to something I didn't know I wanted. Stop. Please. God, just stop. But there's no stopping. My mouth pulls back, jaws snapping down, over and over, feeling skin and muscle tear, tasting the salt and the heat of his blood. His body twists, weak hands pounding against me, scratching, fighting. But his voice is breaking, giving way to soft, strangled cries. It's him and me, my body devouring his, my mind screaming in silent horror, torn between the repulsion and the craving, both so strong I don't know where one ends and the other begins. I taste his life fading, bit by bit, until he stops moving, limp beneath me. My hands fall to my sides, and I'm left there, panting, mouth and hands covered in his blood, insides roiling with satisfaction and disgust. The hunger settles, just a little, but doesn't go away. It sits there, dark, waiting. I know it'll be back. I look down at what's left of him, the bloodied mess that used to be a person. Pieces of him are scattered around me, stained on my clothes, smeared on my hands, and I feel nothing. Not horror, not revulsion, just emptiness. Number. That's not right. There's something else, something worse. I feel good, sated. A part of me is horrified by this, revolted. But that part feels so far away, drowned by the darkness, the hunger whispering again, like an old friend, like a promise. I don't know what I am anymore, but I know what I'll do. When the hunger comes back, I'll follow. There's blood on my hands, dark, drying, almost black in the moonlight. It stains the shredded skin, sinking into the folds and cracks as if it belongs there. I stare, feeling nothing, but then a name surfaces in my mind, just a whisper that strikes like lightning. Emily. It hangs there, echoing in the dark. A face appears, flickers, blurs, her eyes dark and warm, framed by wavy brown hair. I almost feel her, the laugh that carries through time. She's saying something to me, but her voice is faint as if drowned. I love you. The statement hits me, and with it, shame, thick and heavy, curling around the hunger. And there's a weight pressing on my chest, suffocating, even though I know I can't breathe. Guilt claws through the numbness, pulling her words up from wherever I tried to bury them. But it's gone, leaving only emptiness. My head pounds, trying to piece together fragments of who I was. The flashes come and go, sharper, harder to bear. The kitchen table, a family dinner, laughter, the smell of coffee, her voice as she hums, my wife, her hand on my face, the love so clear I could cry. Then it's gone, and I'm left alone in silence. The hunger stirs again, gnawing through the warmth of memory. Another face flickers into view. A child, a little girl, with a gap-toothed smile, clutching a worn teddy bear, her eyes full of trust. My daughter. I'm holding her hand somewhere bright, laughter filling the air. She'd giggle, squeezing my hand, saying, "Daddy, let's do this forever." And I'd smile, say, "Forever, baby." I feel it, warmth in my chest, something close to happiness, something I can almost touch. The thought stabs through, sharp and real, and the pain that follows is worse than anything I've felt. I want to scream, to claw this feeling out of me, but it's part of me, inseparable. My family, I need to find them. No. And that's when it hits, the full weight of it. They're gone. Forever. I'm the one left here, trapped in this rotting shell, condemned to this endless gnawing hunger. A laugh bubbles up, ragged, hollow. I'm dead, but I'm still here, clinging to what's left of them in my mind, like some kind of pathetic penance. And yet, it'll never be enough to fill the void they left. The hunger stirs again, feeding on the pain, growing with each memory, each regret. But there's something else, faint, a whisper from the last remnants of who I was. You don't have to do this. I close my eyes, letting the memories wash over me, feeling their warmth, their pain. And for a moment, the hunger loosens, slipping back, and I'm just me, a person, a father, a husband. I can stop. I'm trying to cling to that sliver of clarity. I'll stop. But the hunger is there, lurking, waiting. I thought I could stop. I was wrong. The hunger comes back, an unrelenting, insatiable beast. It doesn't care about vows or memories. It rises, drowning every thought, every last shred of who I was. All I know is the hunger, expanding, filling me like rot spreading through flesh. I stumble forward, dragging my feet each step closer to the living. A faint glow of streetlights in the distance pulls me, and even as I scream in my mind to turn back, it's too late. My body isn't listening. A man steps out of a car, his whistling dying the second he catches sight of me. For a heartbeat, there's confusion in his eyes, just a flicker of disbelief. But I'm close enough to feel the warmth radiating off him. Run, I think. But he doesn't get a chance. My hands dig into his shoulders, nails scraping bone. He tries to pull back, but I clamp down my teeth, shredding through his skin. Hot blood gushes into my mouth. It's metallic and raw, filling me with a sick, animalistic thrill. He's screaming, a primal sound that echoes through the night, but it only fuels my hunger. My teeth grind deeper, ripping flesh, crunching tendon. His warm blood splatters hot and sticky over my hands, down my chin. No, no. The words spill out, garbled, thick with blood. Somewhere inside, I want to stop, loosen my grip, let him go. But the hunger claws at me, relentless, drowning out any shred of mercy. My hands keep moving, fingers tearing, teeth sinking deeper until I'm lost in the raw, brutal rhythm, ripping, gnawing, consuming. I don't stop until he's just a bloodied, hollowed shell at my feet, a nightmare painted in red. I stagger back, wiping my mouth. I can still taste him, feel him inside like he's become part of me. I stumble away. The hunger gnaws, relentless, twisting inside me. I turn a corner, desperate to escape, but there's someone else, a woman walking her dog, oblivious. No, please, not again. I beg, but it's useless. My body moves on its own, drawn toward her warmth. Her screams slice through the darkness as my hands latch onto her, fingers digging deep, holding tight. I bite down, tearing into her shoulder, the rush of her blood searing through me. It fills me, but somehow only sharpens the hunger, that endless, insatiable need that nothing, not even flesh, can satisfy. Please, I think, let this end. Let me die. But the hunger, it stirs again. I feel it, low and insistent, an ache that won't go away. I close my eyes, hoping for darkness, for an end. But there's nothing but the hunger, whispering. And I know in the deepest part of me that this will never end. I open my eyes, hunger gnawing at my bones, and find myself on a dark street lined with familiar houses. I don't know how I got here. One moment, I was somewhere else, sinking into darkness. Now I'm standing in front of a house that feels known. The porch light flickers weakly, barely alive. My eyes trace the door, the windows, edges worn by years of something I can't name. A tightness clenches in my chest. I'm not supposed to feel anything, but this place presses on me, screaming from a fading part of me I can't reach. I step forward, feet dragging over concrete. My hand, what's left of it, finds the door. I feel the metal, cold, sinking into bone. The door swings open. Inside, the smell hits. Coffee. And something warm, like number stop. But it's too late. I know this smell, this place. My feet pull me inside, down the dark hall. I'm moving without meaning to, my body betraying me, dragged forward. The hunger, that terrible hunger, pushes me on. A sound from upstairs. A creak. Tiny feet across carpet. I know what it is before I see. The hunger digs in, twisting me, urging me up the stairs. I don't want to go, but I can't stop. At the top, a door stands slightly open, a strip of light spilling into the hall. In the center of it, a small shadow shifts. Daddy? The word hangs in the air. Her voice, fragile, like a whisper wrapped in cotton. I try to say her name, to warn her, but all that comes out is a low, guttural growl. Her eyes widen. She steps back, dropping her teddy bear on the floor. Her lips tremble. Daddy? Her face blurs, twisting, fading. But there's something else, a flicker, faint, buried in what's left of me. Love. It's small, fragile, breaking through the cracks, just for a heartbeat. Her name is there, soft and warm. I remember her tiny hand in mine, her laughter, the way she'd look up at me with those trusting eyes, the way she'd curl up against me, safe, warm. I know I would do anything to protect her, anything to keep her safe. But then it's gone, snuffed out as the hunger roars up, an endless gnawing void swallowing everything I was, everything I am, shredding the last scraps of me, chewing up memories, swallowing every last trace of who I was. What's left of me drowns, dragged down, a stone sinking in a black sea. All I hear is the beat of her heart, pulsing warm in the silence. Run. Please, baby. Run. But I lurch forward, teeth bared, hands reaching. The hunger takes over. I am gone. The black house. Oh, how I love the black house. It captivates me. Fun and debauchery abound, a den of indulgence and excitement. Every Friday I find myself drawn here, and my dastardly actions always go unheeded until I have had my fun and I'm well gone. Then there is all hell to pay. I have left chaos in my wake. I am nestled as usual in a secluded corner, my little nook, where I secrete myself with a book until an interesting or exotic bird of the female persuasion catches my eye. I never actually read the book, but I find if you frequent any bar book in hand, you can enjoy a reasonable amount of time in relative peace, except for a few snorts of derision now and again. They just assume you are nerdy and have no social skills, but little do they know that I possess both a passion for literature and the ability to engage when I can be bothered. The desire rarely crops up. I plan to accumulate a choice of whiskeys, so I can survey my prey without showing my hand too early, and I can surreptitiously survey the room. The bartender is used to my appearance, so doesn't flinch at my pale skin anymore, and is happy with my custom, as the whiskeys don't come cheap here. He doesn't even attempt the petty small talk, just takes my money and nods. We have a little arrangement, a mutual understanding, where if I identify something or someone of interest, I let him know, and he, in turn, lets me know what the object of my desire's chosen tipple is, and he shares with me the preferred drink of my target. I often wonder if he knows exactly what I am up to, but if so, he never lets on. If I just wanted sex, engaging solely in sexual encounters, it would be so much easier, as that's what a lot of people come here for. However, I have a distinct craving for blood, its pulsating, pumping, flowing essence. The exhibitionist in me needs the little scare that this time I just might be caught. The extra thrill of fellow drinkers breezing by as I indulge my taste buds. I have been known to get too excited and must retire to my little nook to remove the skin from my fangs to ensure they are still in pristine condition and replace their covering veneers. No, before you ask, I am not a vampire. I paid a fortune in dental work to get my fangs, to achieve my desired appearance. I will not die if I don't get to satisfy my cravings, merely languish and fester in boredom and misery. There she is, an interesting, nice, and petite woman. I used to believe that bigger women, big-boned girls, that their size would enhance flavor, make it meatier and tangier, but I was mistaken. All that excess fat and flavor only gets in the way of the pure delight of the blood. I tend not to waste my time, so I catch the bartender's attention to make sure he is aware of what she is drinking. How ironic that she's having a Bloody Mary, a drink I love. I gesture for the bartender to pour me a double Bloody Mary, and it's sent over. I pop in my little pill, and am ready to go. It simply makes them a bit drowsy. I'm not doing any harm, but they never have the will or energy after partaking to stop my suckling, ensuring they will not resist my advances. They'll explain away and rationalize any marks or cuts in the morning, thinking the sex got a wee bit energetic and will be too ashamed to mention to anyone a one-night stand, or as I find it much nicer to say, a fleeting romance. She gracefully and gratefully accepts my offering, and together we retreat to my secluded spot. The bite she inflicts on my neck and the lump she takes out of it is sure to leave a lasting mark that will undoubtedly become a permanent scar. The intensity of her sinking her teeth into my neck excruciating, and those fangs are absolutely real. It's impossible to deny their authenticity. As I let out a terrified yelp, the bartender, seemingly amused by my distress, adds a small pill to my whiskey as a gesture of kindness, although I can't help but feel unworthy of such mercy after what I did to his niece on his night off. I never intended to cause real harm. Unbeknownst to me, I inadvertently ended her life, mistaking her stillness being from the effect of the pill, like countless others I had met before. Now, her lifeless body lies in the cold, unforgiving, and unyielding morgue. The specter of revenge, as always, is on the menu and lingers, hanging heavily in the atmosphere and air of the black house. I can feel my inert and lifeless body being lifted and thrown onto a cart. I am fully aware that my ultimate fate lies within the morgue. I find myself positioned next to the bartender's niece, and apart from the marks and bruises on her neck, she retains a certain beauty. I almost feel like partaking of her juices again and indulging in her essence once more. However, I suspect that her vitality has long since faded, making my lifeless form incapable of deriving any pleasure from it. I had hoped that my assailant might leave me to wander the earth forever, more with real fangs this time. But not a chance. I wasn't that fortunate. She decided to finish me off and bring my existence to a permanent close. I find it perplexing that the bartender's niece, whose name I need to inquire about, is smiling at me, despite being in a similarly unfortunate situation, albeit appearing far more attractive. Are we destined to spend time in the afterlife together forevermore? I burst into laughter when I muster the courage to ask the question, and she responds, "Mary, my name is Mary. Bob Barker and the price of cookies." If Bob Barker was dead, he apparently was making the most of it. Bev checked the date on the magazine, guessing this bundle of BLTNs had gathered dust on some post office loading dock until some chuckle-headed awoke from their civil service coma. November 2024. She angrily brushed the white hair from her eyes as the early November winds buffeted the mailbox bank, then located the mailing label that cheapened the high-tone, heavy matte cover. Bev's old stylist had been a pretentious little bee with a stack of thick, chic, hoity town and countries in the waiting area, hoping to attract a classier clientele to her shitty little dump of a shop next to the campus Domino's that smelled perpetually of pepperoni and perms. Upshot was, somebody was going to have to get their hot goss at the Gas End Gulp or the Great Clips like a normal peon this month. Thanks. Beverly L. Tryon, 107 Oakline Drive, Millington, Illinois. Bev blinked and re-examined the other two cover boys. She was pretty sure Jimmy Buffett had sailed off into the sunset not too far back. Her hairball ex would have held a 3-day wake for the man if he hadn't already cracked his parrot head 3 Februaries back on his way from the VFW to the Moose after the last of the vets cut him off. The Legion already had turned off the spigot, and Lend canned the VA shrink halfway into intake, opting instead for his former wife's counsel to grow a set and just get over yourself. The third didn't ring a bell with Bev. Dimly familiar old black guy who sported at least a 5-pack, and who might have been handsome if, well, you know. Whoever he was jamming out on some unnaturally white beach with the purportedly late Price is Right host and the patron saint of every midlife mess who'd ever dropped the mortgage on a PT Cruiser. By the way, apparently not J.D. Power's top pick for surviving a collision with anything much larger than a pop-top. She read on. Come on down. The 3Bs rock their second anniversary with Rita's and Rhythm in Paradise. Bob Barker raises the curtain on his mega canine rescue and personal crusade against poverty, while Jimmy Buffett and Harry Belafonte share their greatest hit island recipes, including the greatest cheeseburger this side of paradise. Bev frowned as a dead maple cottonwood cyclone teased her varicose ankles. She didn't care for Bob's new tarnished silver mane, and the alto sax was certainly a new one on her. Buffett wailed on his Martin guitar, part of a treasury of parrot head trivia she'd inherited along with the deed to a charred cube of Cruiser. Belafonte she now recalled from the piece-of-shit Beetlejuice movie her daughter had dragged her to after the divorce. Only good part of the idiotic, blasphemous thing, though now she recalled that when he wasn't slapping the bongos, Harry was a major troublemaker, one of those. I thought he was dead. Bev heard her own cervical pop as she whipped irritably around to find 109 craning over her shoulder. Though she'd ascertained ownership, Bev hugged the slippery magazine protectively to her chest. If I could just... The maddeningly tall old busybody next door mumbled as she attempted to reach around Bev's compact girth. Bev leapt back, and the amazing 6-foot woman scooped an impossible stack of catalogs and political flyers from inside her narrow Ace Hardware box. Bev suspected she was a libtard. She kept a patch of weeds and hay between their houses with a sign about how she was a friend of the butterflies. The city wouldn't do anything about it. Must be some kind of marketing campaign, 109 chirped, extracting her own sleek BLTN from the pile. What do you think that stands for? Probably like AARP, but I got that Saturday. Huh, addressed to me. Weird. Maybe the O people sold my name to a mailing list. Bev's jaw tightened. Her neighbor tapped her ET forefinger on the mailing label. See that in the corner? 1/7. 7 freebies to lure us in, then the sales pitch. God, I thought Belafonte was dead. You know, my mom actually met him during one of Dr. King's marches. I'm freezing my ass off. Later, Bev grunted, scuttling across the street, narrowly averting a Domino's driver who apparently thought 30 minutes or it's free was a personal code rather than a desperate marketing plea. The card floated to the olive shag as she slammed the front door shut against 109 and the others, those who'd wormed into the downtown fringe with their hippie gardens and rainbow flags and black Antifa Lives Matter and socialist blue yard signs as her neighbors cashed in one by one. Steadying herself on the doorframe, Bev bent painfully to scrape the cream-colored card from the filth and fibers. This subscription is a very special gift from Aileen. We hope you'll enjoy our thoughtfully curated articles, Bev snorted, and that truly BLTN enriches your understanding and perhaps even your life. With love, Aileen. Christ, Bev breathed, dropping into the threadbare Thomas recliner Len had neglected to include in the prenup. Aileen. There was a cousin Eileen on Dad's side, and 2 Count 'em Ellens. One a little cunt on the Millington High cheer squad who'd made her senior year a nightmare. The other a bigger cunt of a cousin on Len's roster who she hadn't seen since her ex's 40th. Bev studied the 4x6, logo-embossed card. She realized the signature was handwritten. That itself seemed hinky. The magazine had slipped between cushion and arm, and Bev cursed as she worked it free and flipped open the stiff cover. Barker stood, arms crossed, in an improbably green field under an impossibly blue sky, surrounded by seemingly thousands of people each holding a dog. Every color and size, humans and canines, and breeds Bev had never seen in her 30-mile radius of a life, or that show with that scrawny little Mexican Cesar Milano whatever. All dogs go to heaven, but Bob Barker wants all transcendence to have a forever home, too. See page 10. As Bev polished off her Marie Callender's meal to share Italiano meat lasagna with a dessert combo of Barker and Buffett, she was certain she'd been scammed on some elaborate and epic level. The old bait and switch, Len would have called it, probably. What was the phrase? Catfishing her for her Discovery card information, or Social Security. Bev's old pal, Wikipedia, had confirmed Barker had died in August 2023, 1 cent short of 100 of the Alzheimer's. Unless they'd discovered some miracle cure for dementia and rigor mortis, Bev suspected somebody with a computer had deep-faked up the entire photo spread like they had at the Capitol back in 2021. Buffett had nibbled his last sponge cake about a month after Barker'd cashed in, and Belafonte's ticker'd kicked out in April the same year. Bev read on, forsaking NCIS and then NCIS and so on, to peruse Kirstie Alley and Olivia Newton-John's favorite John Travolta films, Not What You'd Think. Laterneuhura Lady's new stage production of something called A Raisin in the Sun, and a selection of Tom Clancy's latest poetry. The new Harper Lee and Raymond Chandler novels were coming out, and Roger Ebert reviewed Robin Williams' upcoming comedy. Throughout were more references to transcendence, something called shepherding that appeared to be some kind of Big Brothers, Big Sisters deal for adults, and other weirdo jargon with a Scientology-type vibe. By 10:30, Bev had bypassed the crossword for a last-page nightcap called BLTN Bites. At first, she recognized none of the 8 mugshots lined up along the bottom of the inside back page, and she fumbled her Walgreens cheaters on to see just what this shit was all about. I'd sacrificed my creativity for what I thought were family responsibilities, when I actually had surrendered what I loved for family expectations. Now, I sacrifice nothing. Tina H. Shepherding has opened the doors that kept me in darkness as a husband and father. Sergio F. As I help heal tortured and guilty souls, the cries of the camps finally have begun to fade. Gerhard W. I'd tried to treat my wartime nightmares with liquor and marriage, except I was only chasing poison with poison and a toxic relationship. Leonard T. Bev paused at that last, scrutinized the accompanying thumbnail, a beaming, tanned, mustached man who appeared to have lost a good 40 pounds and a network of broken capillaries. Len seemed to be smiling up at her, not in contempt but with an infuriatingly pitying joy. Bev frisbeed the magazine across the living room. The second edition was in the mailbox Friday, slumming with the Miles Kimball / Harriet Carter catalogs and Subway and Arby's coupons. Doris Day, Grace Kelly, Janet Leigh, and big-boobed Kim Novak adorned the cover this time, sharing a jumbo bucket of popcorn under a theater screen filled with a doughy, inscrutable face. "We too!" the blood-red headline screamed. Hitchcock's blondes talk Weinstein, micro and macro aggressions, and traps and tips for tomorrow's Hollywood 2BIs. Bev's faintly glaucomic eyes did a full loop as she wondered what in the fuck a 2B was, and she turned from the trio of mailboxes before glancing about the dead, gray block and sneaking a peek inside 109. Beef and cheese and teriyaki chicken, Harry and David and Land's End catalogs, and 109's own copy of BLTN. Bev started toward 108's box, but a chipper voice shattered the frigid November air, and she tasted copper. "We have to quit meeting like this," 109 murmured, with a theatrically arched eyebrow, towering entirely too closely. "Oh, it's here. I was hoping. This would have been perfect for Thursday chemo." The WNBA's eldest draft pick looked more Panera's or Whole Foods than Arby's or Subway, pale and knobby and the color of chicken skin. "Shoot, I was hoping maybe you'd want mine," Bev lied, waving the glossy magazine. "You don't like it?" Uzdokas gasped. "I find it so affirming. You know everybody in there's dead, right?" "Everybody," Bev echoed. "Sick. I mean, what's the deal? Is this some kind of, what do they call it, cyber scam?" They don't have a website, I checked, so not really cyber. And if this is a scam, it's an awful expensive one, don't you think? Did you notice there are no ads, no information about subscribing? How do they pay for this whole production? You know what I think maybe this is about? Second chances, better choices, leaving regrets behind. You know what performance art is, right? I think maybe this is like performance journalism. Bev remembered how good fucking Len looked, considering his past stint as 240 pounds of flame-broiled road chuck. "I think you're batshit crazy," she snapped, struggling across the street with her slippery bundle with as much dignity as she could attempt to muster. Back in the cost-efficient, 60-degree comfort of her living room, Bev ripped through the December BLTN, scanning the names and faces of the dead. Cronkite, Winehouse, Plath, Walters, Shakur, Bogart, Cobain, Dr. King, Mr. Spock, the famous dead Kennedys building homes with Eisenhower, Johnson, Nixon, and a lanky and badly styled goateed fellow who, if Mrs. Werschnick's fifth-grade history served her, had taken one in the balcony 40 and some odd more ago. This time, Bev snatched the card mid-flight, a gift from Aileen. Just between us. Aileen. The tone was indefinable, the silence that followed arctic. Bev stumbled backward against the recliner's arm. "Nat, do you know any Aileen? Wasn't there an aunt on your dad's side?" "You never listened." Bev's daughter sounded a decade older, though it had been a little less than 3 years since they'd last exchanged a spoken word. What? You never listened. You couldn't hear anything through your anger and hate. You wouldn't hear anything. God, Natalie's voice broke into harsh, strained sobs. The hell are you babbling about? Bev snapped even as her fingers trembled around the smartphone. Of course, it was us too. We wouldn't hear it. Him. Her. Oh, fuck. We thought we were the victims. We were the ones in pain. But you. Fucking you. Bev was now holding the phone in both hands, perched on the Thomas's arm as if suspended over infinite space. I'm not sitting here while you fucking cuss me out. You called me, Nat shrieked, gasping and now laughing murderously. After all this time, you called me to remind me what a poisonous, soulless, hateful old cunt you are. Well, her daughter panted. Well, I guess better late than never. Right? Right? The phone slipped from Bev's arthritic fingers as she fell back into the cushion, veined legs kicking, folded and trapped on her back like a tortoise wearing its carapace beneath the skin. Nat's unearthly rage and madness crackled somewhere in the deep green pile below, a blaze her mother was powerless to extinguish. Just between us. Before the evil took hold of him, it was their little joke. One more thumbprint cookie, an extra slice of Kroger cake or Baker's Square French silk before Mom scooped him up for supper. A reminiscence or chuckle her woke daughter would never have tolerated. We'll keep this our little secret, just between us. When Aiden finally confided in Grandma, he'd turned it against her, and she wasn't going to be extorted by a spoiled, sick 13-year-old. After it all began, after Aiden began spewing insanity, his vile inner thoughts and whinings, after the wheedling and fits and the pervert libtard shrink, and the constant trips to Chicago, and the financial realizations that threatened Paula's college, and the public displays and declarations, and finally the family's exile from holidays and even communications, the cookies and cake and the secrets had halted. When Bev herself banned the boy from her home, spitting his adopted pronouns back in his face, he'd called blubbering from one of his freak friends' phones to keep her from immediately ghosting him. He was alone. Dad would no longer speak to him. Mom had told him he was a selfish brat who'd made them outcasts. Aunt Nina told Mom, on speaker no less, that she couldn't have the girls exposed to such depravity, and the church in which Nat, Paula, and Aiden all had been christened had written to revoke God's blessing on the deity's behalf. Grandma, just between us, I kind of feel more and more like just killing myself. Bev also had received a Dear John, Luke, Matthew, Mark from the Second Millington Church of Jesus, though not from quite so far up the chain and merely punching her ticket to Tuesday night prayer and gossip and the coveted holiday potluck chairmanship. It had been months since Nat had so much as dropped her a check-in text, and the atmosphere at the Catholics' Thursday public bingo had dropped 20 or 30 degrees since Aiden's, parentally, unauthorized interview on the local AM morning show. Well, Bev had reflected, calmly, tonelessly, better late than never. Oh, of course, she couldn't blame herself. Like the literal drama queen Aiden had become demanding his true self, he didn't have, nor, as Bev had quipped, any longer had the stones to face the humiliation he'd brought down on his family, on his grandma. She had nothing to torture herself over. That was on the man with the swastika and Jesus tattoos who'd unloaded 7 slugs into the creature who was once her little guy in a Peoria LGBTQ health center lot to the tune of Genesis 1:27. Number it was the betrayal. Bev raged as she thrashed ineffectually to free herself from this final posthumous revenge, the effort sending jolts of pain up her left arm. He'd broken their pact, the little bastard. Or bitch. Finally, a young feminine voice pierced the growing fog. Bev blinked up at a figure perhaps not as lovely as Aiden had been handsome, but somehow far stronger. Better late than never, I guess. Miss? She'd been halfway down 107's weedy walk when she turned beaming to the gaunt, middle-aged woman gripping the porch rail next door, as if she were awaiting the first life raft. The long, frail neighbor woman was smiling uncertainly back, apologetic concern in her deeply sunken eyes. "Hello," the girl greeted in a rather low but somehow comforting tone. Instead of holding her stance in annoyed indecision or briskly crossing the scrubby turf between them to expedite the encounter, the young woman continued down the walk and took the sidewalk to 109. On closer examination, she was what some might call homely, slender but big-boned, crisp blue eyes, set perhaps a centimeter too far apart for standard, conformist beauty. But she moved with what Kelly's own mother might have called bearing, a confidence in who and what she was, and that whatever that was just, well, right. The girl waited at the bottom of the steps, inviting, inquiring, neither expectant nor demanding. "I didn't mean to disrupt your day," Kelly said. "I thought I might have heard something from, Beverly's a minute ago, and I just wanted to know everything was all right." "It is," the young woman smiled brightly. "So you're not... I'd understood she had a grandson." She did. "And please don't be sorry. I was coming to see you next. You've received your complimentary BLTN, Mrs. Grambling?" Kelly's head tilted before the smile returned. "Well, yes, though I'd have to say I'm at a bit of a loss as to what exactly it is I'm reading. Full disclosure, I'm in no position for long-term subscriptions." The girl looked to the sky with a grin. "I guess, if I had to say, we're about second chances, better choices, leaving all regrets behind. Options. I'm kinda out of those." Kelly sighed. "Mrs. Grambling, do you have a minute to discuss options?" "I guess I have that. And please, Kelly, Aileen."